Make sure to follow my Twitter, that's at @ADodgerKid, for more content and discussions. Guardians of the Galaxy. You are perfect. Yeah, I'm not even gonna lie right now. I don't even know how to start this review off, as I have not fully collected myself after watching the movie. Like not even close. But when I tell you that no movie has ever made me this emotional before, I really mean that. I really do. And I know saying something like that is gonna get me a ton of annoying ass people in my comments going like, oh, go watch a real movie, MCU shill. Which is just hilarious because, for one, I'm almost never not watching movies, and the Guardians are just about the only thing left in the MCU I've cared for since Endgame. The Guardians of the Galaxy are a group and series that I grew up watching. Guardians 1 was one of the first MCU movies I actually remember watching, and I remember it really damn clearly despite the fact that I was like 10 when I watched it. That movie was a masterclass by James Gunn that turned one of the most unknown groups in comic books and turned them into goddamn superstars. It's actually what inspired me to start actually reading comic books as well. So the movie holds an even bigger place in my heart. Guardians 2 I know isn't loved by everyone, and while it does have a couple faults, I can easily look past them because of the brilliant character work, visuals, and music. Two absolutely great movies in my opinion, full of so much passion and heart. So now here we are at Guardians 3, and it may just be my recency bias talking, but this was the best out of the entire trilogy. I'm just gonna say it right now. I love this movie so goddamn much, man. I love it. I love it. I need to rewatch it already. Jesus. And yeah, I'll admit it myself. I am a bit biased towards these films and towards James Gunn's filmmaking style, but I feel like that's going to play a factor into really any review. There's no such thing as an entirely objective review, as art is entirely subjective. And most people who tend to disagree with that statement tend to follow a certain trend of thinking they're a lot smarter than they actually are. So anyways, of course with a Guardians movie and with a James Gunn movie as a whole, you're gonna get an absolute banger of a soundtrack, and this film doesn't change that trend. Both in terms of the actual original music for the movie as well as the old classics that are included, it fits and it adds so much to the overall atmosphere of the film. There is a lot more old songs in this movie than I think there are in his other Guardians movies, but they never feel out of place here. One thing about this trilogy is that it just couldn't survive without that specific aspect. Who would have thought that having a main character obsessed with pop music so much that he gets all his space buddies onto the hype with it would add so much to these films? It's pretty much a staple of these movies. The opening credits are a really good example of this, but if you haven't seen the film already, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it. This is a spoiler-free review. Visually, this movie is at the top of its game whether it comes to CGI or overall cinematography. Usually with MCU films, you're going to get very average-looking shots and camera movement, but not when it's directed by James Gunn. Nah, this guy knows how to make something look good, and he delivers on that here too. There are maybe a few instances where it looked a little janky, but that's really a nitpick compared to the fantastic variety of different shots with different messages to tell. People were clowning on the Adam Warlock flying shots on Twitter, but it looks good when you actually watch the film, so another example of Twitter blindly deciding they're gonna hate something before ever giving it a chance, am I right? The rumors are true that this movie is much more serious than the previous ones. Who would have guessed? But that doesn't remove the comedy that James Gunn is known for. It doesn't always hit, as I didn't find Guardians 2 all that funny compared to the first film, but here it works pretty well actually, which is surprising because just like other MCU entries, some very serious moments are cut off by jokes. But unlike a movie like Love and Thunder where it's tonally inappropriate and very repetitive, or Black Widow where it's just flat out unfunny, the writing and delivery of these jokes tell you that everyone knows how to actually, be funny. So even when they undercut a serious tone or scene, they work, especially since the serious moments get their points across enough before the joke comes in. Of course, the main selling point of the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise is the Guardians themselves, and boy oh boy are they done justice in this film. Every character gets a shining moment and not a single person feels left out. Gunn takes a more mature and nuanced approach to the Gamora situation rather than the typical will they won't they approach that a lot of movies take when it comes to like romance romance, and I respect and love him so much for that. Mantis and Nebula add so much surprising tension between the group that makes you feel even more different, conflicting emotions on if they're really going to make it all out okay. Drax, while not being the most beloved iteration of the character from the comics, shows in this film all the reasons why Gunn made the right move to write him the way that he did in these movies. But the real star of this movie, of course, is Rocket. Known as the hidden protagonist of these movies, Rocket drives this film to even greater heights than it could have reached without him playing the major role he did here. From his insanely tragic, emotional backstory to his character arc coming full circle with such a beautiful conclusion by the end, he makes his mark as one of the best supporting and main characters in all of superhero media. Even characters like Cosmo and Kraglin also have some really damn awesome moments despite being kind of secondary guardians. As for the villains, I actually really like the High Evolutionary. Okay, that's a bit of a bad way to put it. I fucking hated him, but that's the whole point, so I love that. Now, his writing is mostly pretty standard, but his terrifying dynamic with Rocket and the very good performance by Chukwudi Iwuji carries him to being even better despite the writing not being all too special in his case. Plus, there's a scene by the end of the movie that is surprisingly really gruesome for an MCU film. Like, when I saw this scene, I thought the movie was rated R, but it's PG-13. As for Adam Warlock, he's alright, I guess. There was a lot of controversy around him being a very divisive factor in this movie, and I can definitely see that, but I don't really mind it. I think he was fine for what he was supposed to be in the movie, though I think a lot of the divisiveness would have been less exemplified if he wasn't advertised as such a big, menacing character when he really isn't that. He's what I'd expect Adam Warlock coming fresh out of the womb to be. Assume what you must with that, but the movie didn't really advertise him as that, so I do understand why some people found him disappointing, but it didn't really bother me that much, even though I do somewhat agree. I will say there's a little bit of weird pacing at the start of the film, like some subplots and plot points in the first half felt a little more dragged out than they should have been. Like, this movie's 2.5 hours long and you probably could have cut at least like 15 minutes, but it picks up way better off in the second half of the movie, and the first half's pacing issues were never too big of an issue to bother me all that much. And oh man, action in this movie is fucking spectacular. There's one scene in this film where the gang is literally just busting up bad guys in a hallway without any major cuts, with some really cool slow-mo and camera movement, and I was so goddamn hyped up watching that. So hyped. But nothing made me more emotional than the last 20 minutes of the film. The ending to this movie, to me, is brilliant. It's beautiful, and left me feeling more mixed emotions of happiness, sadness, and satisfaction than I have ever gotten from a movie. I grew up with these characters. They're part of the reason I love comic books and superhero content to this day. Even with my interest in the MCU being practically non-existent at this point, I couldn't help but feel like a kid again watching my favorite group of space misfits go at it for one last ride, and capping it all off with one of the most satisfying conclusions to all their individual characters and their group as a whole. While there may be a couple issues in the movie, I can't look at them widely. Maybe my opinion will change in the future, but I really don't see it happening. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to me is a perfect conclusion to what is, in my opinion, the best comic book movie trilogy ever made, from the best comic book movie director of all time. I've loved absolutely everything that James Gunn has made so far. This leaves me even more excited for Superman Legacy because no one can make a comic book film like James Gunn does. I love these characters, I love these movies, I love this filmmaker, and I can't wait to see what's to come from his DC universe now. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you have rocked my world. This is more than I could have ever asked for, and with that being said, that's gonna cap off my review. Call me biased, I don't care. I don't care. I love this movie, I love all three of these movies, I love these characters, and yeah, it feels really weird to say goodbye to these characters. It's still hitting me right now that we're not going to be getting anything else from this group anymore, which sucks, but if this is the end to their journey, then I couldn't be more satisfied with it. So with that being said, if you enjoyed the movie and want to see more movie reviews from me, leave a like down below, comment what you would like to see me review next, and yeah, subscribe to the channel too, of course. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.